risk hai to ishq hai. Collection is not aligned to what algorithm is doing, the entire piece will fall apart.
This would start helping the customers get their money within 24 hours, which probably was never possible earlier on, right? So this is the change that is happening with the technology, and I think we are already leading the chain here with probably being the largest MSME fintech.
He's talking about more data. Now that's what make me go weak in the knees. Do it in a controlled fashion, and how do you bake in those learnings in your regular portfolio?
Hello and namaskar. My name is Ram Deshpande. I am the host of a new podcast series called the Lendingkart Show. In this series, we will be speaking with our leaders from Lendingkart, the people who are driving innovation and disrupting the finance industry like no other, and doing it as one team. I also recommend you to listen to our earlier podcast series, which was hosted by our colleague Kinney, where she had interviewed all our leaders. Those podcasts are available on our YouTube and Spotify channels. We take that discussion forward and get into further details of Lendingkart and the fintech industry overall. Now let's go and start the Lendingkart Show. Folks, so far in this series, we've been speaking about improving conversions, customizing our products for our customers, increasing our geographical reach with the help of our tech and product engineering teams. But there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes at Lendingkart. It has always been our priority to achieve profitable growth. But the key question is growth even possible without compromising on portfolio quality? To know more about that, we have with us the man who knows his risky business, our Chief Credit and Risk Officer, Sundar, and the man who makes logic go weak in its knees, Umesh, who is our VP of Data Sciences. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Ram, thanks for having us.
Nobody's introduced me like that.
The risky business, huh?
Risk hai to ishq hai.
Risk hai to ishq hai. Achha ji. Kahan se shuru hua ishq?
Maybe I was in love with numbers, and that's where it started.
Okay. And how about you, Sundar?
So to me, it's a bit of a story.
Okay.
When I kind of moved into risk, I was always in collections. And the person who hired me said, if you know what not to do in risk, you will probably be a good risk manager. So that started about 2 decades ago. And here I am continuing in risk.
Wow. Awesome. So what not to do is a lot more important than knowing what to do.
Absolutely.
So Umesh, has that been like that for you? You've been around Lendingkart for over 5 years now. You've seen the Algo develop and you work very closely with the credit team. How has the journey been like for you?
Oh, there has never been a dull moment. A typical credit cycle takes 5 years to understand. But with COVID intervening, my entire learning of those 5 years was compressed in 2 years. And I also learned a lot about cash flow based underwriting, which is very different from traditional underwriting. And we also realized the importance of that because a lot of data was playing a catch up with lockdowns and everything. And cash flow was, impact was seen immediately on cash flows. And so we realized the importance of cash flow based underwriting in those periods.
So the Algo kind of kept evolving, or there were lots of experiments you did? How did it all come about?
Oh yes, the Algos was continuously tweaked. We were putting in rules, policies in place for changing situation. There was a lockdown and then there was a multiple waves happening. Different industries were impacted at different levels. Different geographies were impacted at different levels. So how do you try to incorporate those continuously signals which are coming at you? How do you incorporate that in your underwriting was an exciting journey.
Right. So basically the pandemic kind of played a catalyst role in the whole digital lending process getting bigger. That's a very interesting point, and I think it will be very interesting to get Sundar's perspective on this. You must have seen the change from traditional to modern. And when we talk about credit underwriting, I always had this image in the traditional way that he referenced, like somebody going through a stack of papers in a big file, and figuring it out. It's almost like Chitragupt going over your Pap and Punya balance and deciding, do you go to heaven or do you go to hell? Do you get the loan or do you not get the loan? What do you think, Sundar?
Ram, and I think it's probably true. You say this in a lighter way, but that's exactly true. And it's probably part of my story as well. I come in from a really traditional background in terms of underwriting and to a fintech. Now, there's been an evolution of sorts. You started with the fact that it was a very manual exercise, visiting the customer's place, trying to estimate cash flows, to start looking at a scorecard where we were looking at demographics, now to going with a bureau And the current model is where you have a scorecard where you are looking at a bank statement plus the bureau variables.
Yeah.
So this has obviously been a great journey, and hugely for me, it's been a learning experience with lots of unlearning of what I used to do when it was a traditional mode.
And in our fintech, it's also the focus on an underserved segment of the MSMEs across India. Do you think that has also grown like so much that we can consider MSMEs to become like retail now in the future?
Absolutely. Ram, I think if you start looking at it in terms of MSME, it's a hugely underserved market. And there has been a big credit offtake. I mean, the recovery post-COVID has been dramatic, right? But having said that, you're also looking at delinquencies kind of stabilizing. There has been an impact across the marketplace where delinquencies seem to be going down. There's also the whole government support in terms of small and medium enterprises. There has been, even in the budget, a discussion about trying to take the corpus to about 9,000 crores under the CGT MSE scheme. And this is potentially going to give us about 100 basis point in terms of loss reduction. So one could argue at saying, just given the current status, that MSME is probably the new retail.
Right. And the pandemic had a significant impact across the world. And obviously our economy was not, protected from it, especially the MSMEs. And if you remember during the pandemic, the MSMEs were the ones who were doing a lot for the entire society. I mean, factories were closed, but MSMEs were still operating. And we stood with them at that point. We were helping them out. We gave them certain options in which they could sort of get their financing all right. While all that was happening, we were also working on the algo, like Umesh was mentioning. Now let's get into that, the algo-driven aspect of it. Has that helped us get more customers through the funnel, so to speak? Obviously there is top of the funnel which widens as we become more well-known and as our marketing becomes better, maybe.
Right.
But at the same time, when we talk about the algo-driven underwriting, how does that impact the customer flow?
Well, our algo-driven underwriting has improved a lot with the kind of variety of features which we are using in our algorithms and the granularity of those features. Our underwriting has improved. You talked about NTC segment, right? A new to credit segment which we book, their performance are very similar to someone having a 700 plus bureau score. So that means that our algorithm is able to serve that kind of segment who had never access to credit bureaus. And while we are emphasizing on algorithms, I just want to highlight one thing, that as with other things in life, it takes two to tango, right? And the focus which has been in terms of sourcing, booking, collections, everybody through the funnel is speaking the same language, is having a precise view of what is our risk appetite. That helps us, deliver these results using algorithms. So for example, if sourcing is not aligned to what algorithm is doing or collection is not aligned to what algorithm is doing, the entire piece will fall apart.
And right? I think if I have to add, right, I think there's a method to madness in the way we do things, right? While Umesh talked about a risk appetite, we decide upfront and saying, what's a risk appetite, what's the kind of returns that we want, and everything that we work around really stems from there. So when we decided saying that, this is my risk appetite or this is the return that I want, we then work on what is the kind of pricing that you want to do, what is our cost of funds, what's our cost of delivery, what is the cost of acquisition, and then work on a particular plan in terms of how do we really want to run the business. Now, post that, I think to the point that, Umesh was talking about, we then need to make sure that the through the door is in line with what we want. So typically what we expect is that if you're able to get in good credits onto it, and if you're able to manage them well, the returns will automatically flow. So the focus really is on the kind of customers that are being sourced. And all of that is decided more in terms of saying, can I look at getting good credits and how do we do it and run it through the scorecard, which gives us the comfort that, this is a portfolio that we can build. And I think if I go back to your first question of trying to say, can I get growth and achieve profitability? This is probably the way to go.
Right.
To make sure that you don't just end up buying deeper. Incidentally, if you look at it, in LK, about 80% of what we source is greater than 700 as a bureau score. So the good news is that there is significant number of customers who are good credits, who need the money, and we are able to go ahead and make sure that we are able to kind of meet their requirements. And this is with not compromising on the credit quality. And I think that has been something which, at least over the last 2 years, where we have significantly grown and, meeting the credit quality that is required. And you would also look at it and saying, this is helping us be profitable. We have had about string of 6 or 7 quarters where you have been profitable. So we do think that this is something that will continue.
Correct. Yeah, I think very important because when we looked at last 5 quarters of profitable growth and consecutive at that, because the previous 2 we had the restructuring etc. happening and we had the exceptional items. But after that, after covering for that, now we have 5 quarters consecutively where we are now profitable. And when I was discussing this with Harsh, like the first 1,000 crores of disbursals that we did, it took us 3.5, close to 4 years. And now we are doing 1,000 in 3 months, in a quarter.
That's right.
So that's the kind of growth we have seen in the last 12 to 14 months, I would say, that growth, now when it comes to data transforming portfolio management, now, because what we are talking about, like you said, the portfolio quality has to be good. Now, that's a very general statement to make, or a very umbrella, larger statement to make. Diving deeper into it, how does data get into portfolio management?
Right. So, Ram, we emphasize so far in booking good credit-worthy customers, but there are 3 vectors on which we have to optimize. Yep. So, you want to separate out who is a good credit customer versus a bad credit customer, but you also want to make a right offer to a good credit customer. So if you're not giving him a right amount or a right pricing, that customer is not going to come to you. So in that sense, data plays a very important role, that once you've identified a good customer, how do you give him a precise offer so that he takes your offer, and both in terms of amount as well as price, and which is consistent with your risk appetite. So when you're trying to optimize on these points, there is a lot of data which we use. So there are, of course, banking variables which we use, bureau variables which we use. We also look at in terms of what is his off-book exposures, the loans which is running at other places, his experience with us in terms of top of the funnel, and then we try to optimize these points for him.
So do you think that has helped us also increase our existing customer business or the repeat business that we've got? And in the last few months, if I check that has grown significantly for us. Is that helping with the repeat business?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have created this whole program wherein there is an entire team dedicated to reach on our existing customer base. There are a lot of customers which are kind of underserved, are coming for the first time with us. We are trying to reach out to them immediately after, let's say, 6 months to 12 months of their journey with us. We are trying to reach out to them, giving them offers if their bureau has been good.
Customizing a product for them also.
Exactly. Giving them a product which is, let's say, a revolving line kind of a product where it's not a term loan. And the whole idea is that we double down on our good customers. While someone who is not good, we try to focus on collections there. But someone who has been with us for a long time, we double down on them.
Right. I would also like to add, see, if you look at an NBFC, what are the 2 things that plague an NBFC? One is obviously a high cost of funds. The other is that saying the customers build their history with us and then go to the Bajaj of the world. So the problem is that we are not able to retain these customers at this level of interest. So it's always very important for us to retain customers, right? And that is really what Umesh was talking to in terms of different programs to kind of keep them interested. And even in our own scenario, you're now looking at with co-lenders and specifically PSU banks who can give us the lower interest rate for us to keep the customers with us. So he has got a good history. You've got to continue to retain him, and that's really what we are doing. So you would now see inorganic growth. I think it's about 24-25%, which is in line with the industry, and that's really what will help us grow. So you will get about 60-70% of new customers. The balance needs to come in from our existing customers.
Yeah, and I think that's where being a fintech helps, because then our tech sort of helps us get closer to our co-lenders, get them on board, and we differentiate ourselves significantly from, let's say, most of the NBFCs for that, who are our partners as well.
Right.
I mean, we were talking about this earlier, was that we don't necessarily have any competitor, right? Everyone is potential partner or already a partner with us.
That's right.
Right. But then let's talk, while talking about impactful portfolio, now we talk about good quality portfolio from a delinquency standpoint, etc. But when it comes to an impact, whether it's an investor perspective or from a future growth standpoint, etc., what would you consider that? How would you consider a portfolio to be an impactful portfolio?
See, I think we are obviously in that space already, right? Because MSMEs are the lifeline for the country. So if we are able to kind of support their business, I think we are already helping the country grow, the economy grow. So I think from making an impact, I don't think there is anything better other than really supporting the MSMEs.
That's 30% of our economy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think just doing that, supporting them, I think is probably the best thing to do. Yeah. And we should also look at this from a standpoint that saying that MSMEs earlier was always seen as a vulnerable segment, not much of data available. So there was always seen as a bit of a risky segment, so to speak. Now, what's actually happened is that, whether it was the pandemic, and if I can kind of take a data point, pre-pandemic, we used to get about 50% of customers who came in with their GST.
Yep.
Today, that has grown to 75%. Wow. So this is obviously talking to us about the fact that there is a lot more formalization in the economy that's happening, right? So thanks to the GST now, there are crores of invoices which are available in the open market. Now, what's really happening is with all the data that is coming in now, you are able to make a lot more informed decision. And importantly, given the fact that we are also digital, we are also trying to get the cost of delivery to be lower. Right. So given this, I think now you will largely see the MSMEs coming into the formal sector. There is still a very small percentage which is in the informal sector, but over a period of time that's expected to kind of become more formalized. And with the account aggregator which has come in, it's getting the data a lot more seamless. With the account aggregator, and let's say they start getting data from the banks and from the GST and directly, it will lead to a seamless integration. It will also lead to a seamless underwriting process. And this would start helping the customers get their money within 24 hours, which probably was never possible earlier on, right? So this is the change that is happening with the technology. And I think we are already leading the chain here with probably being the largest MSME fintech.
So taking that point, sorry, go ahead.
So you see, he's talking about more data. Now that's what make me go weak in the knees.
You will go weak in the knees. No, I know that data really is something that makes you go. But I think to point on the MSMEs aspect and what we have seen, and when we speak with customers and we have done a bunch of testimonial videos, etc., and listening to their stories, and how financing helps them continue their business and grow it further, we've always seen that the traditional approach was a little easier. I mean, for a traditional underwriter, it was a lot easier to go for a salaried person. Like when you walk into a branch, like all of us as salaried employees, we have our pay slips, we have our contracts, and we just show them, and it's like tuck, 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 done. When an MSME goes in, is a completely different approach. There is a lot of mistrust probably. And when we saw our Algo being, we also got the thing that we are not biased. The biases get removed as soon as we sort of move to an automated fashion.
Right.
That was a significant moment for us also, right?
Yeah, it was a moment of, how would I put it, a proud moment for us.
Yes.
Because Women's World of Banking, they did almost a 6-month exercise dissecting our algorithms. And they were kind of looking at if our algorithms are gender biased, because they are an NGO who insists on that it should be a more open society and with gender neutrality and all. So they had this PhD students from University of Zurich who cracked open our algorithms to see if there is any bias, and it was a proud moment for us when they said, okay, there is no bias in our algorithms. And
also the fact that it is not a black box, right? With
correct.
the explainability.
And we let them inside our kitchen.
So an independent validation of our algorithms is good thing, and this is a risk with machine learning algorithms that many of these things are not explainable, or the hidden biases are not coming to surface if an independent view is not taken on them.
Cool. You mentioned a little bit about cost of delivery, right? And when we talk about profitability, there will be other costs also that will play a role. How do we look at that? Because that's the biggest question, right? I mean, growth without compromising portfolio quality.
Right. So if you look at cost of delivery, given the fact that, we are trying to deliver that at a lower cost, given what we are doing through straight-through processing, all the digital ecosystem that's available to us, there are other costs as well which kind of impact our overall cost. which is basically cost of funds. There is cost of delivery that we just spoke about, cost of credit that we covered earlier. Now, as a fintech, the biggest benefit obviously is that we don't throw people at the process. So we try and throw technology at the process, which means you are able to scale without necessarily incurring an incremental or an additional cost.
Yeah.
So the cost to income typically in an industry, that's been one of the biggest banes, because you end up taking in a lot of people, and that's obviously not helping the cost side of things. So as a fintech, the biggest benefit is your cost to income could be, let's say, sub 50%, which is something which is aspirational for a lot of the lending institutions. As long as we're able to manage that equation, then I think it's probably the best way to go as far as growing profitably is concerned.
And this is very crucial because the business itself is a wafer thin margin. At the end of it,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
You're giving out 100 rupees, you're making 2, 3, 4 rupees probably.
That's
Something
right.
like that. And that's why this probably makes a huge difference in the way we operate.
Absolutely.
And achieving it at scale, and that's what we talked about earlier also, is the amazing achievement that I think is the point here. Now, you talked about Ishq, you talked about Tango. So I don't know what kind of thing is going on over here, but seems like you're in love with data. But when it comes to that, and when we talk about all the costs, etc., we are also factoring in hundreds of millions, billions of data. I don't know how much, basically, and whoever I ask it, the number always increases. That's huge, right? I mean, it's just the size of the problem. Is it really big, or it's like par for course?
No, the size of the problem is big, and technology is what helps us. So our entire tech stack is on AWS. The systems which we have created, wherein we are capturing all these data points through the entire journey. Right when the customer logs in his case, we capture his demographic data, GST data, banking data, bureau data, and the way we have cataloged that data is what makes our algorithms powerful. And more importantly, there is a regular feedback process which happens. So internally we have this model assessment committee meetings, portfolio review meetings, where we are looking at how the portfolio is doing, and this review is being done at the highest level. So that feedback is constantly going into algorithms, back into algorithms, to see that what all data we have captured, is it giving me an extra edge or alpha, if you have to use that word, extra alpha, to see if we can book better, or if we can optimize our offer better.
And Umesh, I think it's a great point in the fact that, see, LK doesn't do all of this as in somebody just deciding to change a model or change some of the variables. So we have an extremely strong corporate governance model. Right. So when Umesh talked about having a discussion on the model, there is what we call as a model assessment committee, which meets quarterly to review the performance of the model. If there is obviously a change in the population, or there is some of the variables which is obviously not going in line with what's expected, then there is a discussion around to say what has changed and how do we kind of look at it, and is there a need for developing our new model, which is one of the reasons why you see that we are now on version 9 of the model, right? So there has been multiple versions where there is probably a change in the population that's coming in, for which we will need to redevelop our score. So this goes through an assessment committee where we review the results which happened in terms of performance of the model and then make the changes accordingly. So whether it is in terms of a model assessment, whether it is in terms of our ECL approach that we look at, or whether it is Algo, whether it is a credit risk committee, all of them go through a committee approach, right? And pretty much this is about the functional leads of those units, plus the other leaders who kind of come into these committees to deliberate, discuss about what is on agenda, and saying how do we kind of move forward. So this is really thanks to a lot in terms of a strong corporate governance, which is probably not there even in some of the bigger banks.
Wow.
So I think that's a big plus for Lendingkart. So the decisions are more democratic, are discussed very candidly, and then you take actions that are necessary.
And I think that regularity to it and the feedback mechanism is crucial, because things change. Macroeconomic environments change. Even industry or sub-industry specific things change. Something that I saw very closely when we were talking about amount strategy. What is the right amount of loan for a specific industry and a specific kind of customer? Because that helps us when we are looking at sourcing.
Absolutely.
And when we are trying to, we still have to figure that out, because while marketing is at one place now digital marketing has become traditional. You know? So within our lifetimes, we'll probably have ChatGPT figuring this out for us. We don't know. So when we are trying to plug this feedback back into sourcing, it's very, very important for us to continuously help with improvement of the portfolio quality.
Absolutely.
Because right at source, if we are able to sort of figure a way that we attract the right kind of customers who will have it very easy to go through our portfolio, our Algo, nothing like it, right? That's our endeavor also. When I saw the presentations the first time, when the portfolio review presentations were happening, obviously कुछ तो bouncer गया शुरू में कि बोल क्या रहा है यार ये. But then when I got into the details of risk grading and amount strategy and all the minimas and maxima, बहुत interesting लगा.
Right.
And it is phenomenal that we are able to sort of be so agile, taking into feedback, and at the same time not compromising on governance.
Correct. And just to add one more point to what Sundar mentioned, because he has been a big champion of that, of creating test and learn programs. So we of course double down on what we execute well, but he has created that space for us where we can experiment. So there is an entire test and learn program where we'll not rush with targets and all. And some of the big successes for us which have come from them. So we scaled up a program called Advantage program. And then there was another program which we built was entirely bureau-based underwriting. So while we have governance and all those things in place for our regular program, as a CRO, he has created that space for us wherein there is a set allocation for us where we can explore things and we can run new credit strategies and see how they are working. Of course, the idea is not to bet the house on a new experiment, but do it in a controlled fashion. And how do you bake in those learnings in your regular portfolio?
Right. And I think it's never been all nice, right? I think we have done some of the tests and they have failed. And that's the way it should be. You will always learn from failures, right? If all your tests and pilots are successful, then you're obviously not experimenting enough, right? So the idea is to really look at, trying to take an hypothesis, test the hypothesis and see if it works well. You obviously need to give it time. It takes 6 to 9 months for us to understand whether a test is really working well. But if it does, then you try and move it into a normal program. And that's how you start incrementally moving. Right. Because you kind of start with a portfolio, then you start experimenting given what's the feedback coming in from the market. We need to understand how it does on our books. If it does well, the next step is to kind of roll it out as a normal program.
But now, is this more challenging, this kind of mechanism of continual development in the co-lending environment? Because now we have another angle, which is the partner angle, and we are underwriting for them, right?
Absolutely.
So how does that come together? Because we are a fintech, we are trying to sort of do experiments, move fast and things like that. And then we suppose, let's say a PSU. Of course there is nothing right or wrong about this. It's just different approaches probably. There is a set approach that somebody comes to us with and saying like, here are my criteria. I'm not budging from it, right? And then we have to adjust to that. Is that how it works, or is there still room for us to do multiple things?
Ram, I think, if you look at co-lending, everybody will come with their own risk appetites, right? So it's never going to be easy for them to just align to us because we feel that, this is working. They need to see that happen. So it's actually a journey. They start with something where they are comfortable. We start working with them to say that, we have booked this on the portfolio. We have seen the performance over a period of time and try and convince them to say that, this may not have worked in their traditional model, but this is something that works with our current model, right? And if we are able to show them the performance, and I think a lot of them would possibly see merit in what's being shown to them and they may want to change. Now, to your point on saying, when you do test and learn, would they be comfortable taking it? That's always going to be difficult because you don't necessarily have that performance, right? So typically what would happen is that we may want to start small on our own books, see the performance that's going in, go back to them to say that, we have done this experiment, we have run this for 9-12 months and these are the results. Now, are you comfortable in trying to take a shot at it, right? And that's pretty much what happens. Like I said, it's a journey. I don't think we can expect everyone to align on day one. Absolutely. But over a period of time, I suspect that all of them will kind of come through in terms of what's expected and grow. And test and learn is a continuous process. So this is not going to be a one-off. This will be something that we'll continue to do. So the idea is to probably do it on our books and then move it into the co-lenders as and when they are comfortable.
And as Sundar rightly mentioned, it's a challenge, but that's where we get the kick. And I don't know about other industries, I haven't worked there, but in lending, what I've seen is that if you're able to argue your case based on data, showing them simulations, people are game for it. They understand your point of view. They will put in some controls from their side, but they are game for it. And in terms of understanding if what can be done here, as long as you are able to argue your case based on data.
That is very refreshing to hear, because it's not like marketing where somebody might reject your idea simply saying मजा नहीं आ रहा यार जो भी तुमने बनाया मजा नहीं आया, but without any explanation to that.
Right.
But I think very important point, because on both sides, very similar people, very similar thought process, very similar training, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And as people grow in their systems, they know what the other person is talking about.
Correct.
And when you speak with our co-lending partners, and it's actually a partnership then.
Yeah.
It's a very collaborative way of growing together, because we are working towards their growth also. And that's why they are with us,
That's
basically.
right.
Otherwise, why would they, right?
Exactly.
Now, when we talk about all this, there is a lot of emerging technology, and I've spoken about this with others also, when in AI and machine learning, and you mentioned briefly about that. How is that impacting the work now, and how are we incorporating all the stuff that is going on around the world? And lots of technologies are developing now.
Right.
Obviously, we are not yet into metaverse and interacting with customers in the metaverse yet. Who knows? Maybe we'll do that too.
Yeah.
But let marketing figure that out. But from a purely the algo standpoint, or credit, or underwriting, or risk management, how are the different emerging technologies helping?
So when these algorithms work, typically it gives an output, which is a probability score. And many times you are not able to understand what is the reason that a particular score was given. While in a traditional underwriting, analyst might be able to tell you that why he rejected a case or why he approved a case. What we have done is we have created a module which actually tells us that which are the top 5 factors which are working in favor of a case and which are the top 5 factors which are working against a case. Now it's a sum total of all these 10 factors, and there might be more factors, but these are the top 5 working in favor versus against. And that's what tells an analyst as to why a particular decision has been taken on a case. Now this is very recent advances in the field of machine learning and AI, wherein these algorithms are being developed to understand as to how these factors are interplaying with each other, which was not very clear till now.
And I think this would probably be like an industry first, right? Because a lot of times a scorecard is just a black box. And I think the fact that we have this as an explainable AI, I think helps the customer also understand that, saying, why has he not got a loan and what does he need to do over time to build a score so that he will be eligible for a loan.
So Chitraut will tell you, are you going to hell because of this?
Absolutely.
Or are you going to heaven because of these good reasons? Then that helps in the future also.
Yeah.
Right. Now we spoke about this in terms of from a customer perspective, from partner perspective. Now there is a big thing that also happens, and which impacts your lives also, is there is a trade-off inside the company also, right? When a sales team brings in a customer, they are assuming 100% approval rate.
Right.
Right? And you are saying, no, that's not going to happen. What does that happen? Then how do you look at the metrics and how is that getting solved in the Lendingkart?
So that again, as we talked about earlier, is a function of our risk appetite. We have a very detailed exercise of what is going to be our approval rates, and approval rates would be function of various things, right? What is the kind of lead which is being sourced, then what is the policy which we have applied, and of course, what our algorithms or what our model is decisioning. So we try to break that problem into these various parts and try to understand that if this approval rates which we have to maintain are at the same level historically seen, or they are going up or going down. What it also tells us is that because sales team keeps us honest, because an algorithm would
absolutely right.
An algorithm would be rejecting cases which it should have approved, right? And that kinds of gives us an opportunity to understand and see if there is a pocket which we are not serving but which could have been served, right? So those kind of feedback is what keeps improving the processes and models which we have built.
Ram, and I think in summary, I would say this is what provides a little bit of an excitement in my life as well, right? So when people kind of come in and say that, you expect a 100% approval rate, I would say it is almost like what you see is what you get, right? So if the quality of the application is not good, then there is no way that's going to get approved, right? Because it's very easy for us to say yes. The challenge here is to kind of go through and understand and saying, why are we saying no to an application? Because we believe that by approving that application, we could probably have a lot more grief later on. So I think it's very important for the sales team to appreciate the fact that, when we have gone through, let's say, a scorecard, there is obviously millions of applications that we have already decisioned, and it gives us an X amount of a result. And that's really what we are trying to work towards onto it. This is not by going through each individual application, but the fact is that at an aggregate level, applications like that would either get approved or rejected, right? So that's really the reason why we have these kind of long conversations, which is talking about saying, why is the approval rates low? But I think the real reason is about, as long as we get the applications in the certain way that we would like it, then the approval rates will also be consistent, right? So I think that's really what we are looking for as far as getting a better quality of applications coming in.
Yeah, I knew it will always come back and boomerang on me, this question. But
You asked for it.
Yeah. This is something that we'll discuss on Wednesdays, right?
Yes.
In our 2-hour-long meeting.
The annual examination every week.
No, but fantastic. I think we learned a lot today. I think there was a lot of interesting information that you shared about how we have approached, how we have transformed a traditional way of underwriting into algo-driven digital underwriting, which is helping customers, which is helping our business, and very importantly, helping our partners, because we are doing great underwriting for them. And overall ecosystem. That's I think, the main, like you also mentioned about the impact that we are creating with MSMEs, etc.
That's right.
Right. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks a lot for doing this. And it was such a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you, Ram.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching the Lendingkart Show. All our episodes are available on our YouTube and Spotify channels. I'm Ram Deshpande, signing off. Take care. Bye-bye.